Hey everybody, continuing our Bagtober. I think this is going to be the final video. We have a gorgeous circle bag that Killian designed we're going to put together today. There's a pattern in the description, as always, for the bags these days. And let's get started. So in the pattern, normally if we have just strips of leather, I just tell you in the pattern, cut out the strips. However, this is a circular bag, so these are a little more specific. So the strips are included in the pattern. We have a zipper part. There's going to be a zipper involved. It's basically the same thing we do with all of our other patterns when they're too big to print out on one sheet. You're just going to overlap so that the dotted lines, so this is your overlap part. You're going to overlap that and just tape it on both sides. Now obviously for a circle you can't use the gridded mat to make sure everything is straight because it's a circle, but I did, with the overlap I included a curve, so as long as the curve lines up you're good. And then on the piece that has the zipper, we need to cut this slot out. I would suggest cutting out after you tape the two pieces together. What we'll do is we'll just take a 1/2 inch punch. We will punch the ends here, and then we'll just connect the two lines with our ruler and our knife. So for our circular panels, we had Sophia from Malevolent Leather carve us up two absolutely gorgeous panels to make this bag really one of a kind. Yeah, check her out. I'll try to remember to link her in the description, but I think her books are closed. But we commissioned these, so this is what we're going to be using. But with the circle, you can do tons of cool stuff. You can do inlays, you can do, peace signs or whatever. But it's great for carving as well if you are a tooler out there. So we're going to set those aside and get to work on our supporting pieces. And these are all going to be made out of Wicket & Craig veg tan. And I'm using, I believe this is 4 ounce, which is a little light for the zipper. But we're going to be doubled up on this side. Let me check. Yeah, we're right at 4. Sophia top coated, obviously, because she was tooling. This is top coated, this veg tan. So what I'm doing is, I'm just taking Tokonol, and I'm top coating our natural veg tan with the Tokonol. It's obviously not the same. If you're doing your own tooling, you can top coat the whole piece together, but I do not have the same top coat that she used. So I'm going to use this stuff. And basically what it'll do is, two things. It'll make this leather match a little closer, but also they'll age at the same rate, because if uncoated veg tan ages much quicker than top coated veg tan. So you would have, the bag would start out with the top and the sides being very light, and then it would end up with the top and the sides, or the top and the sides being super dark and the front aging slower. So this way, we're not just thinking about what the piece is going to look like right off the bat, we're thinking about how it's going to age in the future. The slim strap is a support strap that is going to go in the middle of the thicker strap with D-rings or square rings on either end to attach our crossbody. I'm going to be using these 1 inch, they're called single loops. They're rectangles instead of D-rings. But you can use 1 inch D-rings, or you can use 3/4 inch D-rings and cut little notches. In the pattern, there's a mark. This is where we want our fold to be. This fold is 1.5 inches from the edge. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to mark 3 inches from the edge as well. And what that's going to do is tell me that when I fold this, I want the end of it to hit that mark at 3 inches. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of skiving to thin this out, and then we'll put some Velodon tape in here to strengthen it, and then we can get to gluing and sewing this all together as our first step. So it might be hard to see on camera, but I have my mark there and my center mark here. So I'm going to glue here and here, and I'm going to leave a little gap in the middle. It doesn't have to be big, and honestly, if you forget, it's no big deal. Your hardware's not going to stick to it. But I like to just leave a little bit of a gap because it makes things operate a little more smoothly from the get-go. There's not as much break-in period of having kind of a stiff square or D-ring or whatever you're using. Then once our glue's dry, we're just going to slide our rings. So these are cast, so there's no seam. Some brands sell them with seams. Buckle Guys is cast, so you don't have to hide a seam anywhere. And then this is where that second mark comes in handy, because I can just fold this down and glue it. And we're good to go on that side. We'll do the same thing on this side. Now we got a bunch of sewing ahead of us, so we need to attach this right in the center. This is the bottom of our bag. So on the pattern you have two center lines. We're going to use those center lines to very lightly mark on the ends here, right there, and right here and here. And then I'm going to make a very faint line on the inside of those marks. You don't want the line showing once this is glued down. And this is where we're going to glue pretty much everything. So when you're gluing this piece, I never try to glue all the way up to the edges. It's just kind of, at least for me, it's kind of asking for trouble. I just get a nice solid little stripe in there. That'll hold it down just fine for us to get our stitching in. Because last thing you want, if you're using a veg tan at least, the last thing you want is just glue everywhere. Now if you're using chrome tan, it's very easy to just peel excess glue off of chrome tan once it dries, so that's not that big of a deal. Our glue's dry, so we're also going to get our 1-inch strip with our squares stuck down, and then we can have one big sewing marathon here. So we are going to put a rivet here and here. You don't have to, but I would suggest it. It'll help reinforce that seam with the Velodon, but also just kind of looks nice. So I'm going to run a line there. I'm going to use my stitching chisels to kind of mark my straight here, like that, and like that. And now we can get to punching. So in cutting out the zipper slot on the zipper piece, we have to remember, I should actually probably show you all the finished product to kind of give you an idea of what we're making. I did realize the other day, it is a little strange when I don't show you what we're making before we start making it and kind of launch into it. So, here's the first sample. This is the bag. It's circle bag. Kayleen designed it. It's very, very pretty. It's a very cool design. Doesn't really use that much leather at all. But you can see here that the zipper is straight, and here we have a not straight zipper. That's because this edge is going to dip underneath, and it's going to, the bottom overlaps this. So this is how we're going to end off our zipper, but you're not going to see it. It's going to be inside the bag. So that means all we have to do is install this like a normal wallet zipper instead of using two pieces and putting them together. That's not hard, but this is a little bit more simple if you're not super experienced in installing zip. So when we were planning this project, I was like, hey, buckle guy, can we get some, how do I pick out the double-sided Riri tape? Meaning, you can put 2 zippers on it. And they were like, Eric, all Riri tape is 2-sided. So if you put a zipper on one side and a zipper on the other, you have a 2-sided zipper. I didn't know that. So on this design, I think it's going to be really cool to have the 2 zippers right in the middle there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Tex tape and stick this in and stitch it just like we've done on everything else. We do have, if you want to search the channel, we have a really thorough zipper installation guide in video form. And I think if you just search ICSA, I'm going to put it in the description and I forget. So this time, I'm not even going to make the promise. I'm just going to tell you that we made the video and it's on our channel. And I think it's pretty helpful. So it'll show you how to install zipper, and then you can get to finishing up the bag. But basically, we're going to take Tex tape, which is a double stick tape with, it has a little tiny bit of like a reinforcing fabric in there. It is a little hard to peel off the paper backing, but once you do, it comes right off. And I like using this over glue for a couple of reasons. Number one is if you don't place the zipper perfectly, it's easy to, that was my fault. It's easy to pull it up and kind of replace it, and you have, like, the sticking power doesn't go away after one stick. But also you don't have to, like, soak through your zipper tape with glue. It's just a little more tidy. So these aren't perfectly centered yet. Obviously there's zippers we can move around. But I'm just going to kind of line this up by eye here. And this is a fairly long zipper, so you're going to want to start at one end and kind of work your way over. And then you can see I'm using like my ring finger here to move this and position the zipper tape. And the way I do zippers is I'm following, there's a line in the weave, and I'm just following that line. And that way I know that this zipper is going to be parallel to this edge as best as it can, of course. They do make zipper installation tools like that kind of plug into your slot and it perfectly centers it. I don't have one of those, so this is what we're going with. Then we can flip it over on the back, make sure everything is nice and flat, we don't have any bumps, and we're ready to stitch around this thing. Once we're all sewn up, I'm going to put some rivets through a fold over here, just for a little more strength, and because they look nice. I'm going to use a double cap rivet and brass to match the square, ring, whatever it's called. On the pattern for the zipper, there will be 2 dotted lines that are pretty far from the edges. That's going to be our overlap. So we're going to actually overlap about this much to give this some rigidity. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark on one side of each. And then I'm not going to use the other side. I'm going to use my board because I want this to be perpendicular. Is that a right angle? Perpendicular. Not parallel. Perpendicular to the edge so that when we butt it up, everything lines up. So using that little mark, I'm just going to scribe a small line here and do the same thing on the other side. So once we have this side down, before we glue this side together to make our circle, I'm just going to take a quick measurement so we know how long our gusset needs to be. We are measuring from the end with the square ring to the line because we're going to overlap this part, so we don't need to count this part. We're just measuring to this specific line. So my cutting board is 22 inches long, So all I'm going to do is go to the 22 inches and then take my ruler from the 22, 23, 24 and a half. So once we do that, we're good to glue this into a circle. The one piece in the pattern that is not included in the pattern, because it's going to be different for everybody depending on the thicknesses of your materials, is the double seam. So you have the gusset, which we're making, the front and the back panels, which are the pieces that Sophia tooled for us. This inside piece here is a little strip of leather, and I'm sure if you watch our videos, you've seen us do the double seams a bunch of times. We need to cut this piece. So I took our measurement, 24 and a half. I'm going to add 1.5 inches to that so that we have a 3/4 inch overlap on either side. So we need 26 inch long. Then the thickness is how deep you want the front panel to sit from the gusset. Now my suggestion is this is a 3/4 inch double seam. This is good for if you're sewing a binding on. It also it's nice. It gives the bag some depth. I think we're going to go with a 5/8 inch seam because we're not going to be binding it, and that'll pop that beautiful carving out a little bit more. Now, if you want to go for a very tailored look, you can do 1/2 inch, but it's also really hard to put together. I have my calipers set to 5/8 of an inch, and I cut a straight edge on my piece of leather, and all I'm going to do is simply make a mark and cut it out. I find this a little bit easier on thinner leathers than using a strap cutter, but if you are good with a strap cutter, just cut a 5/8 inch strip, and you're ready to go. On either end of both of these strips, I'm going to mark a 3/4 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and this is going to be our overlap. And we'll skive that down so it's nice and thin, and we have a nice even transition. There's no bump. Gluing a circle, I'm just going to take a small cutting board. You use a piece of wood, you could use whatever you have, and that's kind of, it's nice to separate the two that way. Us to punch our stitching line without punching into the other half of our gusset. With that sewn off to the side, it's time to attach our double seam to our front panel so that we can get everything put together. So I'm going to show you how to do one, and then I'll just do the other off camera. But the first thing we're going to do, this is our stitching line. It's about 2-3 millimeters, and I'm going to mark that line on the outside of our front panel. Now that's not going to be a stitching line. That's actually going to be our gluing line, because we're going to move our stitch line in 1 millimeter. So that we don't see a bunch of glue once we get everything put together. On our seam piece, we're going to mark the same stitch line, but since it's veg tan and I haven't token hauled it yet, we don't need to rough it up. If you're using the chrome tan or veg tan that's dyed or hot stuffed or a bridal or whatever, you're probably going to want to rough this part up too. And then we just have to very carefully apply glue outside of that line. Once our glue's set, I'm going to start installing this. Now I am using clips again. Again, I say this every time I use the clips. This is to act as a third hand. It's not to hold the glue for the glue to set. I want to set this lightly, make sure it's all in position, then I'll hammer it down. I want the seam, I'm going to put the seam at the top so that when you're looking down at the bag, when anyone's standing up and looking at the bag, you don't see the seam on the bottom. You can put the seam anywhere you want. It's a pretty neat and tidy seam, so you don't really have to worry too much about it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to start here. I'm using 4-ounce leather for this. Oh, we might actually not even need the clips. If this bends, we're in good shape. Yeah, I think we're fine.
That's so flexible.
Yeah, so you're going to go slow. Don't pull. If anything, push a little bit. And if we have to do any trimming at the end, it's no big deal. But yeah, this is going really easily. So 4 ounces for this one. I usually use 6, but 4 is going to help you out. And I say that because Killian designed this, so I haven't made this pattern before myself. You're watching me make it for the first time too. And it's rad. It's a super nice pattern. So I ended up having a little extra. My measurements were a little off, but that's no big deal. If this happens to you, it's probably better than not having enough. I just drew a little line where I need my seam to be. I'm going to cut that off. And undo the glue and skive it again. There we go. Then you can also flip that over and trim off the little. We're good to go. So now we just have to reapply a little bit of glue here because I want this to go under this, I decided. I don't know why. I just figured that would be cool. So what we'll do is we'll put a little new glue here. Little new glue here. Oh, that glue went over. It's okay. And then since this is going to be down first and then this, I'm going to put some glue on the back of this and on the front of this. So we just place that one there. Pop him in a little bit more. This one here, and hammer it down. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other set of dividers, set them about 1 millimeter wider than the first set that I used to mark the glue line, and mark my stitch line. Now we're just going to sew this, do it to the other side as well, and we're ready to start assembly. So this is the next day. I got both of the double seams sewn into the circles. I have the other half of the bag done, but both sides are the same, so I'm just going to show you one half and then we'll be done. But really, from yesterday, all we need to do is sew these two pieces in the bag, and the bag is done. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my double seam here, I'm going to use my hammer to very gently tap this into sort of a right angle. And that way, it'll sit into our circle and glue up really nice. We're not going to have to be fighting to clip it or anything like that. The leather's not going to try to pull away. But you don't want to go hard on this. You want to do light taps because you don't want to go crazy and bend it out of shape. And then when you get to the overlap, you might have to go a little bit harder. And once we do that, you could see we have a right angle here, and that's going to drop perfectly into our circle once we get it glued. The glue application is pretty simple. Oh, jeez. Because if you look at this side, the gusset, or the double seam, is going to hide basically all this. So you have a little bit of room to kind of... You can be a little messy if you need to. Which, I'm like a bull in a china closet when it comes to making anything, so that's good for me. This pattern works well. So gluing this, on the other hand, is the total opposite. Especially if you have a gorgeous carving like this on your front panel, you want to be really, really careful because it's very easy to mess the front up. This isn't as difficult as it looks. I was a little intimidated by it, but all we're going to do is just... I have a mark here, which is where I want my top, and I have my zipper set to the center, so I know that'll roughly be at the top. I'm just going to go in and work my way around slowly. The most important thing is just to make sure that our edges are even, because you don't want to end up having to sand down one part and then it looks kind of wiggly compared to the rest of it.
Use good glue.
Yeah, use good glue. You really want the glue to be doing the work here. And you can see like we don't need any clips or anything with this. And I'm using the barge toluene free right now, but fair warning, we have noticed that the recent batches of the toluene free are taking more than one coat on a lot of leathers. So you're going to get to this point where you're going to think it's not going to fit. You want to tuck this in here, and it is going to be a little misshapen at first, but once we get it glued in and hammered down, it'll all pop into place. So if you do have any indiscrepancies in your edge lining up, you want to make sure that it's the bottom part sticking out that you can trim, because we really want this top edge to be as even as possible. So once this is glued together, it's just barely glued together, I haven't stuck it, like really hammered it. Now we're going to hammer it, and I'm using the cobbler's anvil. And we're just going to rotate it and really make sure that this is stuck well. So believe it or not, I'm actually going to use the 9-tooth because you can kind of squish it down and get it flat. But I'm going to try to find one of these seams here. So we have a seam right here, and I don't want to split that. So I'm going to try to put my first punch so that this prong lands before the seam and this prong lands after it. So I'll kind of put it on the side there and make a little mark. So I know I kind of want my first hole there. Then I'm going to go down, and don't be afraid to just smush it. Now for me, usually I punch at least, with my work, back and forth to me. But with this one I found that it's easier to kind of move it off to the side, and I apologize if this is not easy to see. Put it like that, and slowly tap it in.
Kind of do it at an angle too, right?
Yeah, because you gotta kind of angle it in.
Yeah. That's
so it's kind of like this.
Yeah, you just have to be consistent with the angle, I've found.
Yep.
At least with the big.
Yeah, and then you get it all the way around the same.
With the 9-prong. At least
You
it
can
makes
use
it a
this.
little straighter too.
Yeah, it's fewer for
Less
me. It's
wobbly.
Yeah, for me it's fewer hits and it's a straighter line. But if you want to do it with 1, 2, 4 prong, like whatever you're most comfortable with on something like this. Honestly, the easiest way would probably just be to mark it, and then use an actual French style awl to put the holes in. We're staying a little more Midwest on this one. And here we go. So once the panels are sewn in and our edges are done, I made up a quick strap. We have our finished bag. So it's a very simple bag. It has a really nice detail here. Honestly, I think I would add edge binding. This is a little bit of a thin edge. So I think I'm going to go through, I'm keeping this one because it's such a beautiful piece of art from Sophia. I'm going to pull this seam and just do a bound edge. But I wanted to show you the simple way to do it. And then the thing about this bag that I really like, the double zipper really helps. Like, Kaylina spent a long time, she made a few versions of this, making this big enough to be able to fit your whole hand into. And it was a very delicate balance of getting the zipper opening wide enough so that it was functional, but not too wide that it lost kind of all of its rigidity for the bag. I've actually never done a double zipper before, so the Riri zippers make it super easy to install that. I think they look great. And that's pretty much it, guys. So the pattern will be in the description. All of the materials will be linked also in the description. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.